This is Graham, a good friend of mine from the recovery world. I've known you for a few years now, haven't I, Graham? A couple of years, I
Yeah, it's
think.
got to be 2 to 3 years, guessing. Yeah, must be about that.
It is, it is. I think from the very beginning of your journey, I met you. Um, so do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are and sort of where you've come from type thing?
Right, my name's Graham. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic and drug addict. Um, I was born in Brighton, spent a little bit of my childhood there, then went to Lewis for a little while. Most of my life I've lived in East Sussex. I moved into New Haven. That's when my alcohol and drug use really started from there, really. I was roughly 12, 13. And, my first ever drug was alcohol. A lot of people, that don't know anything about recovery never think of alcohol as a drug, but I do believe it's a drug because it's mind altering, just like any chemical. And I know I have to stay away, from everything. The first time I ever had alcohol, funny enough, was with my mum and stepdad. Backtracking a little bit, I don't know my real dad. I don't remember him. He left the scene when I was like really young, like 2 or something. He was a alcoholic, but I don't remember him at all. When my mum and stepdad introduced me to alcohol, it wasn't like heavy drinking or anything. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I think they were kind of thinking, well, he's probably going to drink one day, like most people do. We try things, and and they was worried what happens if I end up like my real dad, which in ways I did. um, and so I think their thinking was, they could teach me how to be responsible. That kind of backfired a bit, but not straight away. The first time I drank without them wasn't much later. It was a New Year's Eve, and the original plan was we was all going to go down my auntie's house for New Year, and she knew of a party down the road, that had people my age, and so I ended up going down there, complete strangers, didn't know anyone. I felt so out of place. It was unreal, because like growing up, I always felt uncomfortable in my own skin. I was like super shy, I just felt different, it's like I was blessed that, my mum and stepdad, I call him dad because he brought me up, so I'd just say my parents, just to make it easier. I was blessed in the sense of they always gave me a lot of love and support, but I always still felt less than. I always still felt like a outsider. And, today I understand that is a part of the illness of addiction. I never really thought of addiction as an illness before recovery. I always thought I was just a bad person. I didn't realise I had an illness that led me to do things that, I didn't want to really do. I had no control over. And, you know, when I drank at that party, you know, I just drank and drank. You know, I had a great time, what I remember of it. But, you know, I drank a unbelievable amount in a very short amount of time. And it was like my first time unattended, my first time where I actually got drunk. And my family ended up receiving a phone call saying, please, can you come and pick your son up? He's in a bit of a state. He's stripped off his clothes. He's completely naked. I know. And yeah, he's been, yeah. So, and that was the start. And that was the start of it. When I, you know, left school, and, you know, because my schooling, I went to a special needs school. I struggled with things like reading, writing, and, you know, those sort of things. And I never really socialised outside the school, really, until I left school and went to college. And, you know, that's when, you know, the drinking really became a big part of my life. And also I started trying, you know, like marijuana. And, you know, and for a good, you know, from like my early teens up to my early 20s, it was just drink and weed. You know, it wasn't anything really heavy, you know. And, you know, in that time, I met someone on a rebound. You know, I've got codependency issues, which is another type of addiction. And looking back now, it's like really insane, but it seemed a good idea at the time. We were together only about 3 months before we were trying for a baby. And, you know, she fell pregnant. We ended up breaking up before my daughter was born. But we did get back together briefly, you know, afterwards. At that time, I was obviously quite sick, and the way my mind thought was, you know, my daughter's mum was, you know, in my mind, she was giving me a hard time, and I couldn't understand why she was treating me this way. And, you know, very selfishly, I walked away from her and my daughter. I couldn't handle, you know, the responsibility, you know, but at the time, you know, it was like I couldn't handle her mum. You know, that's where my head was. You know, when I eventually came into recovery and, you know, started working steps, you know, I learned a lot about myself. And, you know, I learned I had a huge part to play. My behaviour, the way I treated my daughter's mum, wasn't nice at all. You know, I didn't respect her. I cheated on her, and, you know, the way she treated me was just a reaction to my behaviour. But I couldn't see that at the time until I came into recovery. I couldn't see it was completely my fault. Why the relationship didn't work. I couldn't see it was my fault that I walked away from my daughter. You know, these are things I've only learned in recovery. You know, after I walked away, you know, there was a lot of resentment, obviously, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. And, you know, I started getting into other substances. And, you know, and at first it was like a relief, you know, it quietened my mind down because, you know, drink and drugs always done for me what I couldn't do for myself. You know, they always, you know, quiet my mind, made me feel comfortable in my own skin. They filled a void in me, you know, which, you know, I've come to learn is a part of the illness. You know, we call it a spiritual malady, and we're just, you know, the textbook we use. There's two parts of it that really describe it. You know, the short way, we feel restless, irritable, discontented, and the long form of it is a section called the bedevilments. I don't know them off by heart, so I won't read them out either. But anyway, and so that's why, you know, because I felt uncomfortable, that's why I wanted to change how I felt. And, you know, drink and drugs done that for me. But, you know, as time went on, the weekends got longer, you know, the things I would experiment with, you know, got worse because, you know, some things didn't work as well as they used to. And, you know, life just spiraled out of control. And, you know, I wanted to stop. And I could stop for brief periods, sometimes days, weeks, like early on in the progression. But obviously, because we deal with a fatal progressive illness, as it just went on, I got less and less control. I always used more than I planned, more than I wanted. And today I've learned that is due to a abnormal reaction I have. It just sparks up this phenomenon of craving. I've lost the power of choice. It's like, you know, my body takes over and my mind cannot control it. It's like I'm on autopilot. I can't stop. No matter how much I want to control, I just cannot control the amount I would consume. And, you know, a clear sign of addiction. And when I did stop, you know, for brief periods, I would have a mind that would lead me back there. It would, you know, I would believe the lies in my head. Oh, I'll just have one. It'd be different this time. I can control it. You know, all those things, you know. And, you know, I didn't always need like a reason. It's like my mind would lead me back there because either I was happy, you know, I want to celebrate, or, you know, I'm miserable, you know, I just want to get smashed, you know. It was like, and it was weird because, you know, I was a functioning addict. I managed to, God knows how, but I managed to hold down my job and obviously done my job, you know, well enough to keep it. And so that, you know, that put me in denial. You know, it's like I always thought a alcoholic was someone that drank on the, you know, bench, you know, homeless on the bench. And I always thought a drug addict was someone that injected drugs. You know, now I understand, you know, a huge percentage, you know, probably a good 80% of people do hold down jobs in their addiction. And they, you know, I didn't lose, you know, much, you know. It's like I lost my home twice, two separate houses, but I never ended up on the street. You know, I was very lucky. You know, like I said, I managed to hold down the job, but, you know, the way I felt inside, I was broken. You know, I was just spiritually broken. And I just couldn't understand why I would go round in this circle. It just went on for like forever. It's like from like the beginning of, from the very first drink I ever picked up right to the very last drug I ever tried. I was in that madness for 20 years. And like I said, at first, it was like a party, it did work, but then it turned around and I was getting these consequences like losing my home and, um, losing my daughter, even though it was me that walked away. And it's like, just life was just, yeah, I was just like a hamster on the wheel. I just couldn't get off, just couldn't stop. It was a crazy, horrible, dark place at the end. And, it's like how I got into recovery. I ended up meeting someone many years later, and it was at a Halloween party. We were kind of set up by a mutual friend, and and she fell pregnant virtually instantly. We worked out it must have been either that first night or maybe like a week later max. And obviously, naturally, I had doubts. Is that child mine? I've got no doubt whatsoever now. Spitting image of me, poor child. And and it's like I didn't want to be in the same situation. I didn't want to end up having two kids I didn't, know. And, that's kind of what encouraged me to get into recovery. I partly wanted it for myself, but mainly it was, I had a second chance. I had a son this time round. And, I always wanted to get my daughter back, but I always knew I would need to change my lifestyle first. And, thankfully today I'm in the life of both of my children. I'm trusted with them. My relationship with my older daughter isn't the easiest because she lives in Devon. So it's like miles away. I can't see her as often as I would like. But I'm slowly, baby steps, trying to build a relationship with her. It's not easy, but it's what I want. It's like family is everything to me now. I remember, walking in, because I didn't see my daughter or have any type of contact at all for 11 years. She's like 15 now. And, so that is one of the big gifts recovery has given me. I've got a relationship, with both of my children. I remember when I walked into my first ever meeting, I was terrified, but there was, a man that was like kind of hovering outside and, like I was. And he was like a giant. I tell you what, he was like really scary looking. He had hands the size of my head. But he turned out to be a gentle giant. It's like, I kind of, believe he was like an angel, sent there for me. And he said, "Am I here for the meeting?" And I was like, maybe. And he took me inside and, he just showed me love. He spoke to me, he got me a coffee. just made me feel comfortable. And when I heard it was a chair meeting, someone shared their, story just like I am now. And I, you know, I found so much identification, not just in, their behaviour or what they used, but also the crazy thinking we have. And I just broke down in tears because I felt at home. I felt, there's something here, there's hope here. And, it's like I'm the type of addict that meetings alone won't keep me clean and sober. I need to do the program, the 12 steps. And it's like anyone that is new, steps are nothing to worry about. I've been through them more than once. Reason being is I made the fatal mistake. I went through the steps, thought I was well now. Oh, I must be cured. So stopped doing all the things that are suggested, and it led me out the door for a short time, thank God. And I managed to come back into recovery. It's like, pride almost kept me out there. But when I came back in, there was no judgment. There was nothing. All the lies that my head was telling me were just rubbish. And I learned a valuable lesson. It's like we never truly finish the steps because we got to live in them. It's a way of life. And so I went through all the steps again. I've made every single amends on my men's list. It wasn't a massive long list, but it was long enough. Today I'm about 26 and a half months clean and sober off everything completely. Like I said, I'm trusted with my kids. I'm able to be there for my parents. They're both in bad health. The life I got today is just completely different. It's completely different. And, when this coronavirus, outbreak, started and we went into lockdown, I was thinking, how am I going to deal with this? In recovery, we're taught not to isolate. And the government is saying we've got to isolate. And I'm like, what? This is going to be quite a testing time. But even though I'm isolated from physical contact, as long as I don't isolate in my head, I'll be all right. It's like I used to, like obviously before the virus and that, I used to attend a minimum of 2 to 3 meetings a week, sometimes more. But now at the minute I'm doing meetings every day. All the meetings have been moved online. They're all like video calls, but like it's all online. It's like a group video call, but you don't have to have your camera on if anyone is camera shy. And weirdly enough, I feel more connected to the fellowship now than I have ever. Because I'm seeing, all my friends on these meetings online, and I can do meetings all over the world. I've done meetings up north. I've done, it's like, that's one good thing about online. It's like, it's great. I do feel connected. A big part, of the, program, I don't know if I should mention, because it might, some people are put off by it, but, the God word. but, you know, to anyone that's new, it's not what you think. You know, this isn't a religious program. Yeah, there's a handful of people that are religious, but the majority, I would say, are not. It's all about, you know, looking for a higher power or God, whatever you like to call it, of your own understanding. It could be anything, anything that's bigger than you, anything that's not you. It's like some people, you know, look as nature, you know, or the universe. It could be anything, you know. For me, it's like an energy, you know, tapping into like a good energy, you know, like a kind, loving energy, you know, and I let that, you know, come into me, and I try and give that out to the world. You know, I try and help others to the best of my ability. Because one thing I've learned about recovery, to keep it, you've got to give it away. You know, today I sponsor others, and what that means is I take them through their steps, because I'm able to do that now because someone, you know, freed up their time and took me through mine, and I'm able to do that for others today. And you know, that was another thing I thought, how am I going to get sponsees at a time like this? But I've been provided. You know, it's like, you know, on recovery groups on Facebook, you know, I saw people started to post they're struggling and stuff like this, and I just messaged, have you got a sponsor? And before you knew it, you know, I've got a couple of sponsees, and, you know, taking them through the steps over video call. I've got used to it now, but it was weird at first because these people are complete strangers. But, you know, I'm so glad they were brave enough to, let me try and help them. You know, it's like when it comes to the steps, you know, I believe it's like a sponsor is like a guide. I will guide people. I will show them how to take the steps themselves. Everyone's in charge of their own recovery. You know, it's like, you know, I'm just like a guide. You know, my higher power guides me, and, you know, I pass that on to my sponsees. And, you know, for anyone that is new or struggling, you know, some of what I said might sound completely nuts, but, you know, it's like I didn't believe in God, you know, it's like, but the word didn't bother me that much, funny enough, because I was desperate. I was like, I'll try anything. And I'm so glad I did, because it's worked. You know, it's worked. And, you know, I saw it worked in others. You know, I saw all the people talking about recovery and doing it are the ones staying clean and sober, you know, because when it comes to recovery, knowledge helps, but knowledge ain't power, not with recovery. It's a program of action. We have to do what the book says, you know. The textbook we use, it's like it's like an instruction manual. It's like we have to do what it says. It's like I can't quote the book, and anyway, you know, it's my personal opinion. But how's that going to help me or anyone? It's all about doing it, doing the program, and, you know, I try and do that to the best of my abilities. That's all I can do. You know, step one, you know, the first step, yeah, you need 100%. Because step one is about learning about the illness, finding out if you definitely got it. You know, do I definitely need to be here? You know, it's about understanding it, accepting I have got this illness. I'm not a bad person, you know. I believe, you know, I was born with this illness, you know, because my biological father had it, but I don't know him, and I still ended up, you know, similar to him in ways. And it's like some people, they may drink or use their way into addiction. You know, the more they do it, you know, they might end up getting a problem because, like, you know, obviously it seems like most of the world seems to be out of work at the minute. And so every day is like a weekend. And I'm sure a lot of people that do drink at weekends are probably starting to drink every day. And before you know it, you can cross over this invisible line. You know, addiction doesn't discriminate. It don't matter whether you're a good person, a bad person, a rich person, a poor person. It can grab anyone. And there's so many people out there that don't realise they've got this illness. You know, it's like I do a lot of H&I work, hospitals and institutions, like visiting places like hospitals and prisons and all those sorts of things, you know, taking the meetings to people that can't get to them. And, you know, and like I go around like the hospital wards and I speak to patients in there. And the denial is unreal on some of them. It's like some of them have, like, you know, lost their leg through addiction from getting infections from, you know, injecting, and they're still saying no, I'm all right. And it's like, it's scary where this illness can go. And, you know, it's just two simple questions we need to ask ourselves. You know, can I stop entirely? You know, as in, can I stay stopped, or do I always go back to it? Can I moderate, or do I use more than I always planned? Because if that is the case, you might have this illness. You might be in like a, you know, the beginning of it, but it does progress. It gets worse. It never gets better on its own. Today, I'm grateful I found a way out. And, you know, I love this way of life. It's given me such a beautiful life.
I think that's amazing, Graham. I think I feel blessed to know you. It's an amazing gift that you want to share with people. And yeah, so I thank you for being in my life, and I thank you for keep coming, you know, for keep coming back. And your message was beautiful. It was a really clear, succinct, you know, if there are people watching this that have never heard of recovery or the 12-step program, or how to engage in it, or any you know, myths that they might have heard of, then I think you've done a really eloquent job in demystifying it. So thank you so much for that, Graham.